I hope everyone's week is going along smoothly. It is Wednesday, 16 November, 2022. It is currently 15:45 hours. That is, of course, 3:45 p.m. in the afternoon for those of you in the civilian world. It is currently 68.9 degrees here on the north central coast of Florida. We had a high today of 78.4 and a low of 67.6. Barometer is currently steady at 30.08 inches of mercury. Now, as always, I want to say thank you to everyone who continues to show up here at YouTube and participates. And whether you agree or disagree, everyone who is here is valued. Thank you so much. Also, those of you who have joined us over at the Patreon channel, where it's only $1, that's right, only $1 per month. Now, some might say, that seems awful low. Are we really getting anything of value? The reason I set it at $1 is so that the maximum amount of people who have the ability to and the desire to can learn something that usually is only taught in the military. High-level psychological operations tactics and techniques. The way they are mentally manipulating people using the media. The 3 basic methods of persuasion: logos, ethos, and pathos. And then, of course, the 24 cognitive biases, the 24 logical fallacies. Over there, what we do is we take real-world examples and we break them down. And we show how they can show one thing and make you believe one thing when the exact opposite is true. You're literally seeing the opposite, but because of the framing effect, they make you believe the opposite. Now, in today's video here, once again, please join us at Patreon if you can. Lowest allowable level, fully refundable first 90 days. So, would love to have you over there. But in today's video, one of the biggest breaking news alerts of the year. It is something that I've seen brewing down in Brazil, and there was a piece of information that got put out that was patently false. And unfortunately, one of my favorite channels here on YouTube fell for it without taking a breath for a minute and looking at the information critically, because it was something that a lot of people wanted to believe. It was the story out of Brazil where there was this hotly contested election, this last October with Jair Bolsonaro, the right-wing, quote-unquote right-wing candidate who was currently the sitting incumbent president of Brazil, versus this Lula Inácio da Silva, who had been jailed for different things, the corruption. He was more left-wing, and a lot of people try to call him some communist criminal and all this. That's not entirely accurate. The left-wing and the right-wing in South America, as I've stated in many other videos, is very different in how it breaks down than the left and the right in North America. Now, unfortunately, BP Earthwatch, the real BP Earthwatch, kind of fell for some fake news. He found a headline with this idea, quote, how it's done. Over 3 million Brazilians protest election fraud. Bolsonaro to annul the steal. Now, it looks all great. There's this picture of this huge throng of people, and there's Brazilian flags being waved everywhere. And it's alleged that the photo is of a protest in support of Jair Bolsonaro, and that the mass majority of the country believes that the elections were fraudulent, and that the military needs to step in and they need to get rid of the... It's all fake news. It is all completely fake news. The picture you are seeing here is of the celebrations for what only North Americans could construe as what they call Constitution Day, or they call it Proclamation of the Republic Day. It was basically the day that established the first Brazilian Republic. It's a little bit different than their Independence Day, but it's a huge national holiday down there. And they showed this huge throng, and this is on Twitter, and you can hear the people chanting and singing and celebrating. And they took this and they put a fake headline on it. And this was from the Gateway Pundit. You see, they fell for this. The election was very, very tight. It was very close. But, some said, Florida Maquis, are you sure the military is not going to get involved? Well, Republic Day in Brazil, you can look that up. It's a common holiday. You won't find this. It's very, very difficult to find because the vast majority of those out there know it's fake news. And people have said, well, if Bolsonaro, has any whiff that there's anything wrong, he's going to call up the militia and the military and all this. This is VOA News. Report by Brazil's military and election count cites no fraud. No fraud. You see, the Brazilian military was doing its own separate, independent count, as Bolsonaro wanted. It was doing its own thing, and it was doing it simultaneously. You see, sometimes you've got to take a breath. Sometimes you have to wait. And we have a lot of Brazilians down here. A lot of folks from all over South America, Central America. And, they understand very clearly down there what the price of freedom is. And whether it's Bolsonaro or whether it's Lula da Silva, Inácio Lula da Silva, whatever his name is, the Brazilian economy is exploding. They have almost as much oil as Venezuela does. They are truly energy independent, meaning if they didn't want to, they wouldn't have to import any oil. And here's kind of the weird thing about this. Whether it's Bolsonaro that you think is the best, or whether it's Da Silva, both of them agree on something that would make most Americans, North Americans, kind of cringe. You know what it is? It is legally required of you to vote. In Brazil, they will seize your bank accounts. That's right. You are legally required by law to vote in Brazil. That's why when you go look at the results of this last election in Brazil, you'll see as many people voting in their election, a country of 200 million people, as you see voting in our elections in North America, a country of 300 and I believe 70 million people. Not quite double their population, but very, very close numbers in how many votes are cast. They do have a runoff system. You can't take the presidency in Brazil without at least 50% of the vote, meaning, who remembers 1992? I know that's going back a ways, 30 years ago. Who remembers when George W. Bush, Ross Perot, and Bill Clinton all squared off in the election, and Bill Clinton ended up winning with like 43% of the vote because Ross Perot, ultra-right, and George Bush, right-wing, split the vote. You see, had there been Brazilian rules at that time, there would have never been a Clinton presidency. Never. 57% of the people wanted either a conservative or an ultra-conservative. That's actually what's going on up in Alaska right now. They have a ranked choice voting system where you can vote for number 1 and number 2. So if nobody gets 50%, they go to what the second choices were, and they add them to the totals. So there's sometimes better ways of doing things. Now, there's also, other than in North America, and I know that's almost sacrilege to say sometimes, another one of my favorite channels, Lisa Haven, is talking about something today that would make you kind of scratch your head if you look at Florida. See, she's talking about the fear of communism coming to America, the idea of one-party rule, and how much that's a bad idea, and how we can't have that. We can't have just one-party rule. Now, she puts it in the context of the Democrats saying that it's, you can't be allowed to vote for Republicans. Well, Lisa, what if it's the other way around? Respectfully here, to both of them. I don't mean to beat them up. It's very easy to fall for these types of psychological operations if you're not trained to think about it properly. When you just put it through the filter sometimes of emotion, it's easy to get down the wrong track. Case in point, Florida, talking about one-party rule. Florida newspaper, this was right after the election. Florida newspaper calls state crimson hellscape after historic GOP victories, later stealth edits. See, I showed these last couple videos. There's no Democrat in government in Florida that should even probably think about showing up. Truly, because it would be a waste of fuel for them to drive to work. The Florida Senate, the State House, is 28-12. The Florida House of Representatives is 85-35. It is beyond 2/3 majorities. It's beyond it. So that there's nothing they can do. They would have to work their butts off just to get back to an 80-40 majority to pull that many seats back. And in Washington, D.C., 20 of 28 of our representatives are representing conservative values. And right now, Rick Scott, our senator for, I believe, the northern part of Florida, is challenging for the Senate leadership. So this isn't, for all real intents and purposes, one-party rule in Florida. And it's going to be one-party rule in Florida for a really, really long time. I would say very likely for the rest of my lifetime. You are not going to see a Democrat in any real position of power anywhere. I mean, New York South, down here, the home of the Florida gay community, Orlando, and this tiny little strip of Tampa right here. That's it. That's their entire level of influence. Now, this is the House. Now, right around here, Alachua, in the State House, they have some representation, but still not enough to do anything, which is the same thing in Brazil. The Brazil legislative houses are wildly conservative. I think they have 533 seats in Brazil, and it's like 300 are held by ultra right-wing conservatives. So they're outnumbered there as well. So there's nothing to really worry about in Brazil. Brazil's going to be Brazil one way or the other, just because of their amount of natural resources. But I'd like to throw out an analogy that I think will make a lot of people wake up regarding all of this. Who remembers Nikki Fried? She was our agriculture commissioner. She was trying to get the nomination to run for governor against Ron DeSantis. She didn't even beat Charlie Crist for it, so she just had to fade into oblivion, into obscurity. Now, she didn't have to. She didn't have to. There was a path for her. She just chose not to take it. Because she had a coalition if she had just used the tools that were available to her. But even if she had, in some wild scenario, competed with Ron DeSantis and possibly won, wouldn't change the people of the state of Florida. Now, what was that coalition? Well, in one day, way back last year when she was trying to vie for governor, she decided to jump the shark, so to speak. She threw on a Budweiser hat, some big, huge hoop earrings, and dark sunglasses. And if you knew Nikki Fried, this was truly a jaw-dropping event. She threw on an American flag bikini top, a wife beater over top of that, threw some beer cans on the ground, stood by a pickup truck, and took a picture. And then she put that on her ActBlue, secure.actblue.com, fundraiser page. And she raised $13,000 in one day with one selfie. I mean, that's mind-boggling. I mean, do the math on that. Do the math on $13,000 a day times 30 days times 6 months. How much money she could have raised just taking selfies. Now, I know it's kind of cringe, but think about it for a minute. There were things that were important to a lot of Floridians and people around the world, around the country as well, that she could have galvanized. Number one, upper right, one of the biggest ones would have been legalizing all forms, all use of cannabis, getting the government out of it completely. She could have pulled from both sides on that, meaning conservatives and liberals. The crypto folks, if she had, a lot of those guys, at least up until recently, had a lot of money. Last year it was starting to come down, and it was going down quickly, but it wasn't where it is now. But the idea of making crypto more mainstream, she could have gone to that group, lower left. This really surprised a lot of people. She sued the Biden administration over their, what she believed to be unconstitutional statement that she couldn't have both a medical marijuana card and a concealed carry permit at the same time, that she had to give up one or the other. And she sued Joe Biden over this. I think it's probably the main reason she didn't get the nod to run against Governor DeSantis. Because it's legal in Florida, not at the federal level. So the pro-gun folks would have been on her side from both sides. And then, of course, this is more controversial, those who want to legalize sex work. It's a big worldwide movement with a lot of money. And if she could have galvanized all this in the name of liberty, Bitcoin, the use of substances, gun rights, and a more liberal view of the world regarding different types of work, she could have given Governor DeSantis a lot better race than Chris did, for sure. You see, because there's a platform online that she could have used for this. She made $13,000 on Twitter. If she had taken that tactic and taken it to OnlyFans, she could have raised tens of millions of dollars. Could have financed her own campaign, not even needed the Democrat Party. It would have been something to see, even if she had run independently against Chris. So, but I think that might be something much farther down the road that we're going to see. People get involved in politics that are going to self-finance outside of the parties, and that's going to be a big deal, especially if we can start to get ranked choice voting like is in Alaska. That's going to be a big deal. So anyway, I just wanted to leave that there, but not trying to denigrate in any way, shape, or form Lisa Haven or the real BP Earthwatch. It's just, for me, evidence that psychological operations works every time it's tried. If you don't know what's coming, if you don't know what's out there, and you don't have the tools in your toolbox, you're never going to see it coming. It's like operating at night without night vision goggles. Yeah, you can try, but if your enemy has night vision and you don't, you're going to be on defense the whole time. You're going to be run. That's just the way it is. You have to put every possible tool that you can in your toolbox to be able to win and to be able to fight. And that's what this is, $1 US per month. Would love to have you over there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.